right, folks, welcome to episode 7 of Allergic to Silverware with my mate Keith Cowan, and we've got a very special guest here, and James Gallagher. How are we going, guys?
James, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I've been looking forward to. I can't get my hands on you, but all I can do here is get my eyes on you. But
well, I can tell you, I'm in the middle of the desert, Chief, and those eyes piercing through the screen are still terrifying me, even though I'm in the middle of the desert. Don't know about you, Cowan.
Well, I've been waiting for Gall to fire back now for a couple of weeks after a few of the stories that we're throwing out. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one. And from Ramelton to fucking Churchill isn't that far away, so I'll still just have to be careful here. But no, great to have you on, Gall. Great to see you. I haven't been speaking to you for a while now, so no, great to get you on here, and thanks for answering the call.
No, not at all. No, here there'll be no firing back. I suppose you would have heard me say plenty of times, if you're going to give it, you have to take it, and a wee bit of slagging and a few wee stories. It's never harmed anybody, So no, like most of what you've been kind of chatting about, in fairness, hasn't been too wide off the mark. If you started telling lies now and making stuff up, that would have been a different story,
You've
we're all right for the early episodes yet. Maybe we get to episode 9 or 10, we might have to start bending the truth to make them funny. But no, at the start, we have plenty of material yet, so we're all right. We're good to go.
But anyway, Gal, I mean, I'm not too interested in massaging your ego. It's already inflated as it is. But you obviously had a great career at Harps. You went to Celtic when you were 16. I mean, that's the stuff of dreams for most young aspiring footballers in Donegal. Maybe not for Keith Alexander Cowan over there in Ramelton, but for where we're from and West Donegal, there's a huge affinity towards Glasgow Celtic. So obviously, just if we can kick off with that there. Obviously, you went there at 16, James. July '96, I think you went. But obviously, a tough place to go. One of the biggest clubs in the world. How was it? That was where you got your football and education. I'd say it was a real tough school there. No, there's no time for letting a young lad from Donegal to bed in. It was sort of hit the ground running, I'm sure, was it?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. And funny enough, I suppose before I even went there, it was kind of touch and go. I had an offer on the table from Derby County at the time as well, which was a 2-year deal. Like I was over and back there a couple of times with a few boys from down home, and they had an offer of 2-year, and then Celtic had an offer of a 1-year contract. So at one point, actually, I had my mind made up that I was going to go to Derby because
the security of it.
Well, it wasn't really. I suppose I was only 15, turning 16, and one of the boys from Gall, Liam Willie McBride, Liam was offered a contract as well, and we were buddies and we were playing, and he was going there, and you had the option of kind of following him to Derby and the two of us going together, or going on your own to Celtic, So yeah. At one point, it was tipping towards going to Derby, and as it happened.
Any regrets that one, James? Do you think now, looking back, you maybe should have went to Derby instead, or was it just a case of was it your heart ruling your head, or what do you think?
Well, no, I suppose not. No regrets really. Like I ended up, when the word got out that I was tipping towards Derby, I got a house visit from a couple of gentlemen that were kind of Celtic heavies. And
plenty of them in West Donegal.
Yeah, they somehow found my house down in Minlara, and they landed in anyway, and they had a chat, and they were like, "Now, come on, are you really considering going to Derby over Celtic?" And and I said, "Well, I'm not 100% sure." And so eventually, anyway, like they started passing on messages from Celtic saying, "Well, look, they have huge hopes for you, all the usual stuff to try and get you around and all that, and so swung then back to going to Celtic, and off I went then, Di Canio, you remember, he spent, I think he was there for a year or two when I was there as well, complete Fruit of the Loop stuff there, like, you know.
I can imagine walking in. I can imagine Di Canio having the ashtray and all beside his, you know, with his like wee setup, and he come in with just a quick fag before training and just totally relaxed. You know, the way the kind of Italian setup would be. Have you any stories on him or any sort of madness he'd be up to?
Yeah, well, no, I would have one I could tell, one I can tell you, and one I couldn't tell you, really, like, you know. But
well, tell us the one you can't tell us, Scott.
Well, I suppose the cleanest one I can come up with was, I think he brought, you know, like full, you know, the manscaping and all this full body shit. He used to, you know, like you'd see the boys there.
They can't be a fan of that male grooming.
Oh, no, this would even be a level up from Cowan. It would be this would be taking the razor to, you know, everywhere. You know, everywhere. This is like face, chest, arms, legs, front and back, the whole lot. And he'd be doing it in the
showers in front of you.
We'd walk in, you know, sometimes, you know, probably in the early days, you might be sent in to clean up the dressing room a wee bit, maybe pick up the towels, you know, when you were a youth.
You're sweeping up pubes.
You'd have the buck just standing in the middle of the dressing room, you know, just all lathered up in shaving foam, and him doing the whole lot, like, you know, and you'd have some of the old senior Scottish players, like, they'd be just kind of like, oh my God, what's going on here, like, you know.
Jeez.
But that's probably another couple of wee things about him trancing about the dressing room naked too, but I can't go into them ones.
That's enough nakedness from Paulo Di Canio. But yeah, I'll just to stay on Celtic, briefly, just for a minute. Obviously, sort of when I went to Scotland, like, I suppose one of the first things was a big culture shock was the way people spoke to you, like, you know, youth players and youth managers, and like, I found that hard to get the grips with at the start, because they were, you know, I used to always get, when's the penny going to drop with you, like, and I didn't know what they meant when they said that to me, like, and I just said, it'll drop soon or whatever. But do you ever remember a time at Celtic where you were told, look, you need to get the finger out here, like, your standards have dropped here, you know? A football environment, like, they're not almost the most diplomatic in terms of the way they sort of express their message. Was there ever a turning point for you at Celtic where, you know, somebody hammered you, like whether it was Willie McStay or whoever's reserve manager? That is there anyone that stands out in your mind? Because there's a few for me, like, that I remember. I don't remember the good ones, but I remember the bad ones.
Well, there's a big difference between you and me, like, you know. We're chatting different levels here, you know.
That is fair enough. I'll take that on board. I suppose I was one to frustrate managers as well. You were probably a top pro.
Yeah. No, there was, like, in general it was always, like, when I first went over, you know, I found out fairly quickly that Tommy Burns had good time for me, like, you know, and you know, and he would tell you too, like, Tommy, you know, you'd be wondering, Tommy Burns doesn't know who I am, like, there'd be a cluster of young fellas going about and all that, like, you know, and Tommy would always call you boy, you know, hey boy, you know, something like that. He never called you by your name. He probably didn't know your name, but he knew you to see you, and he would have seen me play and training, you know, sometimes in with the first team, maybe just get wee glimpses of you, and he would just, you know, he'd call you sometimes, hey boy, and you'd be like, you know, and you'd see him and he'd call you over and just have a quick chat with you and say, you know, how are you getting on? Are you settling in all right? And, you know, are you you're not missing home? And a big one with Tommy would be, are you going to mass? And I going to mass, yeah. And just a real, you know, you always got a wild warmth off the man, like, you know. So anyway, Packy would tell me later on that, you know, Tommy's good time for you, like, you know, he's seen you play and, you know, he thinks you have a good presence about you in the goal. He says he knows you're not the biggest, and you're probably not going to be the biggest, but you have a good presence about you in the goal and that, and, you know, he's happy with you. So next thing, maybe a month or two after that, I got the offer of a 2-year extension in the contract, like, you know. So I think probably I was doing well at the time, you know, and but I think Tommy might have had something to do with it, like, you know, because next thing you know, at a 2-year contract signed. So, that was great. It was a great bit of security. But unfortunately, I suppose it wasn't long after I signed the contract that's when things started going kind of pear-shaped injury-wise. But what you're saying is, like, did I get many rollickings and stuff? Not really, because of the way my time went over there. You always kind of, it was a wee bit annoying maybe in a way, but you always had sympathy more than anything else, because they could see what was happening, and you were playing and training, and then you'd get injured at a really bad time or something. Then you'd be out for 3 months, and then you'd come back again, try and get back to your level. Next thing, bang, you're gone again for another maybe 4 or 5 months. This was going on and on and on, and it never really stopped until I left, and so you never really had anybody. Like, if I was struggling in a game, they'd always give you a few games to get up to speed and stuff after your injury, and they always had that, when maybe by right they should be given out to me, they wouldn't really, because they would know my history, and I'm trying to get back from maybe 3 or 4 operations towards, at different stages.
I remember an occasion, obviously it's during Felix's and Eddie's time, and yourself and Gavin Cullen maybe are battling it out for the number 1 spot there. Like, so you have two quality keepers for, as you say, 1 spot. Like, so I think it might have been a crisis meeting. There's a few of them at Harps. Remember, after about 6 or 7 weeks without maybe getting any points on the board, there'd been the old huddle meeting. Like, so everyone was pulled in, and it was kind of one of them. Like, every guy would have had their wee meeting with their car school, and tried to figure out what was going on. But then eventually it was all pulled together. So we're in the dressing room this time, and everybody's there, and we're not scoring goals, we're losing games. And at this stage now, I'm very much on the periphery. I'm 21's player, like, so I'm not really having anything to add. But I think Eddie has a pop about some lads not doing the wee bit extras with everyone else. So I think it was like a case of everyone would have done their training, and then maybe Eddie would have wanted some of the keepers to stay back and do a bit of shooting with the strikers. So I think I'm not sure if you remember this, Gal, but it might have been put to you. Why you weren't maybe staying back and doing a bit extra, and then it's kind of come at you a couple of times, a question, and you've kind of had a wee back to do your saying, well, look, I wasn't right. I'm feeling a bit my knee sore or whatever. And then Eddie's like, you're just worrying about yourself. And then you've kind of launched at him with only like you could with this, you don't know my body, right? And I suppose to put your kind of wee twang on it as well, just if we could do twang on it, it was kind of shouting like, do you know my body? I know my body. You don't know my body, all right? You don't know my body, Eddie. You don't know my body, right? So I don't know what to say. I'm sort of looking at the ground. I'm sort of looking all right, because it's probably the first kind of.
Did Eddie Seydak shit himself?
Oh, Eddie Seydak very much shit himself and moved further away from fucking where Gall was kind of sitting down, looking it up like this here, and Eddie was sort of back and back. So that was the first kind of dressing room crisis meeting that I might have been involved in, and the first time where anyone ever bit back in the situation. But that's how I remember it, Gal. Maybe you have a better, fresher side of the story if you want to chime in there.
No, you're not far off. You're not far off on it. I think it was, the shorter version of that is, say, before a game, like I think it was year 2 with Felix, and Gavin might have been, Gavin would have had the number 1 jersey, and before the game, when we're warming up and stuff, boys doing the warm up, I would have been warming Gavin up, and then the 11 would go in, and then a few boys would stay out for a few shots or bits and pieces, or even, I suppose, the starting boys might want a few strikes, and Gavin might, or normally the first team keeper or first choice keeper jump in for a few, then he'll head in, he's done his bit or whatever. Then the sub keeper would jump in. So I would have jumped in cold then, and so boys would be shooting, and I would, not every night, but some nights, if it was a cold all night or whatever at Finn Park, you mightn't just have been going 100% trying to make the saves or whatever, So that's where Eddie was coming from, and so after the game, obviously the game didn't go well, we lost, and Eddie started barking about this type of stuff, you know. And yeah, you're right. I boys remind me of that line plenty of times, you know, like, I know my body, do you know my body, like, you know. And oh, I was raging, like, you know, because obviously if somebody starts questioning that you're bluffing the fact that you're not really able to do it or whatever. And but Eddie had a point too, like, you know, he needed a keeper in there maybe a wee bit younger and more nimble than me to be diving about and making it difficult for the boys shooting. And I totally understand where he was coming from, you know, and I was just hot-headed and bit back straight away. But, you know, I would say Eddie was 100% in what he was saying, like, you know, because if it was me in Eddie's place, now that had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that we were losing games, you know, and maybe that's why I kind of got rallied up. Now, why are we going down this road about, you know, me not diving for shots in a warm-up, like, you know, when we've just been played off the park or whatever, you know. So that's kind of where I kind of got rallied up. But
in a pre-season, I'm not sure if I was coming back from injury or heading off to uni or something like that there, but I remember being up in the LYT, and we had a meeting, and Anthony was there. I'm assuming you all were there, and when he brought in Jim McGuinness, remember that session up in remember that we kind of knew bit there, and we've come in there. That's how funny the story's come about. I'm not sure if you remember this, just we come in, and I suppose Jim was all into the sports psychology, and was Jim doing the training as well? Was he doing the runs and doing a lot of that stuff?
He took some of it out in Ballyyar, yeah, that's right, yeah. And
then we were in the LYT that this one night anyway, and the whole idea was we were given the pen and the paper, you know, a footballer's nightmare. Given pen and paper to write down your deepest fears, you know. So we've all kind of sat around the table. We've given this, you know, we've got the paper and the pen. And I think I'm sitting beside maybe Funsty and Breen, and like Mick straight away is just not involved, not having this at all. I'm not giving this man nothing. So Jim's going around, you know, sort of talking to the boys and talking to the wee groups and seeing how everything's going. And Mick's just kind of sat there with the arms folded. And he's come round to our group, and then, you know, you're sort of looking, you know, I'm sort of looking around to see what everyone else is doing. Is anybody writing at all? Like, so you're scribbling down, you know, like injuries or, you know, losing games or, you know, I don't know, stuff, just trying to get something down the paper, like. And comes to Mick anyway, and Jim's there. Mick, you're not writing nothing down. And Mick's like, no, Jim, want to know what my deepest fear is? This shite here. He says, sitting there with you boys. I'm here to play football. You give me a shit when the footballs come out. You know, and Jim doesn't know what to do. I don't take him seriously or not. Like, but Mick's just there. Just throws the head up, and Jim walks on to the next group anyway. But
was McGuinness
I don't think
was McGuinness taken back, obviously, by Funsty's refusal to do it? Like,
100%. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that this man was just point blank refusing to write anything down, like, you know, obviously he's into that there, and I think maybe he was a bit of ahead of his time, maybe in terms of getting footballers to do something like that, or to, you know, maybe we should have been eased into it. It was just literally pen, paper, write down your deepest fear. There was no real backstory behind it that I can remember. Maybe there was, but yeah, that was Mick's approach to the sports psychology anyway.
I remember Jim coming to me after that meeting, you know.
Yeah.
And he was saying, Jim said to me, we were back out then getting warmed up, ready to go, and Jim was like, what did you think of that, you know? I said, yeah, I thought it was interesting, it was good, yeah. And what's the story with, is it Funston, is it? What's the story with him? I didn't know what to say to him. I said, do not mind one bit about him. I said, just leave him, let him do his own thing, you know. So, yeah, Jim was like, well, what's the story with that? I said, never mind him, let him do his own thing. Just, and, you know, I think the group in general, but we're buying into it.
Yeah. What a man, Funsty. He was never afraid of confrontation, was he? I always thought Funsty would be a great like trade union leader or something like that. Do you remember the odd?
Oh, he's good at that too. He's good at that too, from what I hear.
Remember the time that somebody gingerly would come out from the office at Finn Park when we were in the coach, like heading away somewhere, and they'd be chatting no wages, and Funsty straight away, well, that's all right, no problem. That's boss will not be leaving the street. So we get our weekends. You know, we're on.
I suppose does that take us on to a bit of confrontation? Another story, Gal. Maybe you can shed a bit of light on the one down in Waterford where Mick was getting his point across, or trying to get his point across, and you were, I suppose, trying to maybe get your point across as well, or where you were coming from.
Yeah, no, he's told that story pretty accurately, really. Like, you know, I suppose from my point of view, see, Mick, that game we done quite well down there that day, and it was a kind of hard defeat to take. And Mick in particular had a very good game, and he'd one of those where he was just running around like a madman. He was covering every blade of grass, and I think what rallied him that night and make him run past 4 of our players to scissor kick or chop the Waterford player was, I think he was frustrated that maybe some of the other his teammates basically weren't on the level that he was on that night. Like, because he, you know, he was just like, we've all had good nights and bad nights, and he was having a particularly good night, and maybe some of the rest of the boys weren't. And I think that kind of had his tail up a wee bit, you know, and he. Yeah, you could see him just taking off, heading for the corner flag. I think he nearly pushed a couple of our boys out of the way just to go to your man and chop him, and that was all right. Like, you know, whatever. And it's Mickey at the end of the day, and so he's coming off then, which is grand. And yeah, he was, you know, he had the march on, you know, and he was throwing the hands in the air and grand. You know, he's heading for the dressing room, but as he was going into the dressing room, he said to the 4th official, "These are nothing but a shower of cheating bass," you know. So I was like, oh, geez, it's like now we've gone up a level here now. Like he's got sent off on the pitch, which is bad enough. Yeah. Now he's called, like, one thing the officials hate, and well, they let on they hate it anyways if you call them cheats. Yeah. So as he was walking off, he said something along those lines, and the 4th official came over to me. He says, "He's just called me a cheating bass, whatever," and says that's going in the referee's, you know, notebook, bloody hell. So what it was a bad situation was made, you know, twice as bad by Mickey by saying that, you know. So my whole thing when we were in the dressing room, when you were describing Mickey and his, you know, he wouldn't just belt up for a wee second so I could put my point across. He
was animated.
He was I was basically what I was going to do was, you need to go into I was going to send him into the referee, and, you know, just apologise to the 4th official basically for saying that. It was the heat of the moment. Try and just keep that out of the referee's report that he called the 4th official and whatever. So that might have helped, it might not, but it's never a bad idea to do that. I couldn't reason with the man at all. I couldn't get a word in edgeways. He was just away and he was going, and I don't know, he was, as you boys were describing it, and you know, like I went from kind of having some kind of structure in my head about, right, I need to get this man. That was, you know, when things happen really quick as a manager, you go in the dressing room, you need to get your house in order quick. How you're gonna approach things, you know, whether that be, you know, give the hard luck story, are you going to rollick them, or you have to kind of judge it quick before you go in, you know. And so I was kind of like, right, I was like disgusted, but I was focusing on the fact that Mickey played so well that night, and I felt sorry for him and a wee bit. But then when all that kicked off, and anyway, making my way over to him, wouldn't shut up. So then he was going and going, and then I was getting, as you boys said, I was getting closer and closer, and I was getting angrier and angrier. And I think he stood up then, and he was, you know, he was sitting at the start, but then he stood up, and he wasn't having any of it. And then, as you say, the most natural thing for me to do then was just to go for him. But now, I think I remember at the time
that was the most natural thing to do.
Well, no, I probably shouldn't have said that. But I remember at the time, I think afterwards, I think I might have I addressed the group. In fairness, that shouldn't be happening. Like, address the group after, and I think I told you at the time, I says that shouldn't have happened. You know, I apologize. But the thing is, like I always found up there when I was managing, and you have to know this as a player too with different managers. Like, it's it's never personal. And I think you touched on it at one point as well, you know, the heat of the moment and things happen. And so when rollickings and, you know, a real drive at a one particular individual is never personal, you know, there's more to it. There's things behind it. And you touched on that as well when you were chatting. But anyway, that was the thing with Mick. All I wanted to do that day was to get him to get into the fourth official, just apologise and say, oh, I don't know why I said that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But never happened. The whole thing just went belly up.
Just try and de-escalate it a bit. Just try and take it down a few levels. Because like, I'd be good friends with Mick, you know, and I'm over the years. And when Mick thinks he's right, he's right. There's no trying to change his mind. But obviously, from a management perspective, you're thinking, Mick, whether you're right or wrong, go in there now and tell them boys you're sorry, overreacted, it was heat of the moment, and your ban might be 4 games, now down to 2 or something like that there. So you have to try and play it that way as well, but Mike wasn't having it.
What I couldn't believe about that night as well, though, and I touched on in the story, was like, there was absolutely no dispute. There was a red card. So obviously James has just said that he's called them cheats. It was the most stonewall red card ever. He's 2-footed, the boy. And James, as you touched on, it was frustration. But I don't know why he kept, like, he wouldn't let you speak. And then, because you did start it fairly calm, you just wanted to speak to him, and he just wouldn't stop. But the funniest thing then was when you did grab him, he literally, it didn't even stop him from he was still having a go at you while you were grabbing him. And it was just, it's funny how wee things like that can just escalate into that. But as you said, like, it was no big deal. And
he was on such a, I think he was on such an adrenaline rush because he did have a particularly good night in terms of how he played. He was just, you know, he had a rocket up he was just buzzing about everywhere. And I think the adrenaline was just pumping on him. And
he had a good feed of chocolate as well before the match.
You what?
I said he had a good feed of chocolate before the match as well down in Waterford. Me and him like to get our wee Snickers in. So all those factors.
Wee Snickers, folks. Wee Snickers too.
I'm kind of surprised. I'm a wee bit surprised in that because I would kind of pride myself a wee bit on not missing much, you know. And I didn't know that carry on was happening, to be fair.
Do you remember though? There was a couple of times, James, you would come down the back of the bus and don't think it was me you gave a touch to, but there was definitely a few boys. Remember you were looking through the bags and you didn't mind the jellies, like. But I don't know who it was. One day it had a fucking chicken fillet roll and a packet of Walker's crisps, and you've just like, what's going on here? Like, we're trying to do things properly, prepare properly, and you boys are down the back eating shit. Like, it was ridiculous in many ways.
It was savage, like a packet of sweets were like contraband. It was why smuggling, why stopping in the wee shop there in Monaghan going past them, why smuggling things down their tracksuit bottoms and their socks coming out of the shop.
Episodes you were chatting about the Jobby Squad. Forks, you were in it a lot. I think the Jobby Squad you called it, was it?
Just under Ollie's time, I was in the Jobby Squad. just under that period.
Oh, was it? Oh, right. I thought you were, you know.
Nah,
but
Ollie had contempt for anyone who tried to pass the ball to another teammate. So,
yeah. But we had for a while. Like I would have been out of the team there at Harps. I mean, at Pats for long periods. You know, when you would have got cup games and stuff. You know, and I would have done well whenever I played. I would have done reasonably well or whatever. But Shea was the number one, and if he made a mistake in a game, you weren't going to drop him. If he made a mistake in the second and the third game, he might have dropped him, but Shea rarely ever made mistakes, you know. So anyway, we found we kind of had our own kind of Jobby Squad at Pats for a while.
There's some cracks, so they are.
Yeah. Not now.
Your
Jobby Squad and my Jobby Squad at Pats would have been two different, you know, completely different animals. Like, you know, you're chatting, you know, like if we played a 7-a-side against each other, like you would be absolutely destroyed. Like, you know, we had boys coming back from England and boys that played underage for Ireland and all that. We had a serious Jobby Squad, like, you know.
How long to defend my Jobby Squad? You've got the current club captain, Garrett Harkin, Tommy Boner, who was at Wolves. I was across the water at Hearts. That's 3 good members of the Jobby Squad. Jimmy Dock, good player. I thought our Jobby Squad do all right. Hey?
No, the different levels altogether. But we used to, the crack and the stuff you used to have. We would have had the same kind of crack, and you get bogged into your own wee world. You know that like we're much better than the boys that are playing and all that type of stuff, would be kind of going on. And next thing you'd end up getting out, going out for beers with each other and bumming each other up and telling each other how good you were and all that. Like, no, it was funny when you were chatting about that. It was kind of happening up there. But no, Dolan was a serious character too. Like, great man manager. Really, really got into your head. And he I remember one time he hung me out about. I think, Keith, you were telling a story about. I think Felix hung you out one time. Said you were going to be something at Harps. You were only back in 2005. What was it he said again?
I'm going to be the best player in the League of Ireland, I think it was. No pressure. I haven't played a fucking football match in about 3 years.
Well,
best hockey player in the League of Ireland.
Dolan used to always kind of, like, I would be, yeah, right. But Dolan said to me one time in front of the group, he knew I was probably, I might have been sulking or whatever, and that's the thing too, that you carry forward with your experiences, because you've been through it yourself, and when you see players doing it, you know what they're thinking and what they're going through, like, and so you'd have periods where you'd be feeling sorry for yourself. And so Dolan must have kind of spotted me to stay out training, and we were training away anyway, and brought in the group. Probably the session was over, and he said, out of the blue, he was like, and big Jamesy, eh? Big Jamesy. And I was like, right. And you know what you are? I'm trying to do an English accent. He says,
good man. He says, go on.
You know what you are, Jamesy? He says, yeah. He was like, you're the best kept secret in this league. You are, And all the boys started looking over at me, and I was, and I tried to keep it in. So I said, I was thinking to myself, did he say I was the best kept secret in the league? And then obviously the whole thing broke up then, and we were chatting. What did he say? Did he say the best kept secret in the league? And but that was his kind of way. He elaborated a wee, but he says people don't even know what you're capable of. He says, and trying to bum me up, to get the thing up, but best kept secret in the league, he said at the time, But
the job he got
a right bit of slagging of that too. All the boys were the boys then, for a while then it was like the Dolan's wee pet, and all this was going on for a while, you're his wee favourite and all this type of stuff, and
oh man, that's cracker. That's cracker story.
Cracker, Gall. But hey, James, just I suppose to go back to your own spell at managing. Obviously, you took the job earlier than I'm sure you would have expected it, because Paul Hegarty obviously resigned. But you always hear these people asking. You've obviously worked under some great managers at Celtic. Then you had the likes of Pat Dolan. You've had Felix. You've had Noel King, Paul Hegarty. Do you do your, like you already touched on the fact that you were very sort of narrow-minded in terms of what you wanted to do, you had a vision, but was there any other managers like a Pat Dolan who had good man management skills? Did you try and maybe take the best of what you've seen of those managers and put it together, or do you have to very much be your own type of person? I suppose it's hard to change your character or your personality to be somebody else. So were you just very much your own man when you took the job?
Yeah, no, you would. You're always like obviously your brain, your head's like a sponge, and stuff going in all the time. And it's only then when I got the job, I was able to kind of think back on the managers that I worked under and that. But I think the worst thing, I suppose, I even knew back then is like, don't try and be anybody. Don't try and copy anybody. Don't try and be someone you're not. I was only 29, but I had that sense, maybe, without even thinking about it, you might have, been, like I know, for example, Higgsy, when he was managing, Higgsy liked to fucking blow the lid sometimes and stuff like that. So, in that kind of regard, I never went down that route where I would pick and choose my rollickins just to copy Higgsy, but that was just Higgsy's style of doing things as well, like, and I think maybe man management way, yeah, I would have remembered how Pat Dolan, would have dealt with people, and even Keeley. Yeah, you just, and I suppose there's something you boys talk about a lot is or you have mentioned quite a lot is presence, and as a manager, like I remember, I suppose the first time I ever heard that I would have a bit of a presence was Tommy Burns when he said back when I was 16 that I had a bit of a presence, but that was from a goalkeeping point of view, and I think you needed, and I never really, I never really felt like I had big presence or nothing. But then as you go on with time, you're not stupid. Like, yeah, I used to notice, like, if I walked into the dressing room, people used to maybe sit up straight, or so I was thinking, geez, I would note that myself. And I was thinking, well, the good thing, like, it would be a good sign,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but never copied anybody. No, just sort of, and even now, if I was to go back into it or anything, yeah, I wouldn't. I would just be myself, and I think that's probably enough, really. To for me to get my point across and to get the job done the way I would want to get it done.
I suppose we felt, James, that when you were there, and even your second spell when you were along with Ollie there, I just remember training sessions especially, and again we touched on the the whole presence thing. Like when you would come in to the drill, or just you would only have to walk over, and then the kind of laughing, joking. Not that it was like we were still doing it properly and trying to do it properly, but we just remember when you come in, it would be taken up a notch, and you would see a lot more quality. And I think then as players, I can only speak personally, as a player, I was learning that, well, you know what, why don't we just do it like this all the time? Because the quality's there, you're improving all the time. And that's something that I took from yourself, and not that I would be given, I would just, I suppose from that there, try and keep the standards as high in training as possible. Players get better, training gets sharper, and the whole thing just works better. Because yourself, when you're having the crack maybe times and you're arsing about, it breaks down and lads are having a laugh, and then it's just, you come out of training and then you think, well, that wasn't much good. Like, yeah, we had a bit of crack, but we didn't really do much there, and we didn't really get much out of that there. When training was snappy and lads were on it and lads were trying to get in the team, and it was just so much better. Like, and I just suppose I can sort of say that that's a real positive that you brought to us while you were there, and it's something then that you've passed on to me, not even knowing maybe, and then like it's something that I tried to take in then on the rest of my career when I was with Harps, and then even up in Belfast now where I'm like, so no, that was quality, that was good.
And not to, as I said at the start of the podcast, I don't want to massage Big Gall's ego, because he does fancy himself a wee bit too, as we know, but no, but just to sort of back up what Cowan's saying, like I kind of mentioned it to you, Gall, before, sort of, I went to Letterkenny Rovers, and obviously the approach to training, because obviously it's a different grade and there's not as much training and whatnot involved, but I definitely took that, the way you train, that approach to training, and applied it at Rovers as a sort of senior player down there. And then all of a sudden the boys bought into it and they absolutely loved it. And instead of sometimes thinking, I've got to go to training tonight, they couldn't wait to get down. And obviously Anthony Gorman was taking the sessions, which helped. He's a top class coach. But you can have a great coach but not a good session. If the lads don't apply themselves properly, you're pissing against the wind a bit. But definitely I thought from my time at Harps, out of all the managers I worked under, like your training, the culture around the place. I know that's a word that Guardiola and these boys use, but like the whole approach to everything was fantastic. Like, so when you were talking about bringing young players through, a player you brought through, James, was Stephen McLaughlin, who obviously we know went to Derry, and was only maybe at Derry 18 months and got a move to Nottingham Forest, and he's been in England for the last 7 years or so. So he was someone who might not have got an opportunity to play senior football if you hadn't given him that chance. So did you know from seeing Macca early on that he was going to be a real special talent? Like I remember he was someone like he had the tan and all that, and he was a bit different in the group. But I remember even in training watching him thinking this boy could be a real player. Did you see massive potential in him?
Well, I did, I suppose, like see what you see, players that kind of there's a lot of wee small things you see in players that you could have player A and player B, you know, they're the same height, same weight, they're maybe the same pace, and then with player A, there's just this one wee maybe just a wee bit quicker over the first meter or two, you know what I mean? And there's the difference that for players that kind of go across the water. There's just the wee small details. Not everybody could probably see them, and I remember thinking with Stephen, those things like that. Maybe just sometimes the way he struck the ball, sometimes the way he would control it. It wouldn't happen too often, but he would do it every so often. Sometimes the way he just would just all of a sudden just breeze past somebody and put the ball in the box, stuff like that. And you just see them kind of things, and you would like no harm to what we had, like players wise, we had great young lads, great, we had a lot of qualities and stuff, but then you had him who just kind of had just small things, not hugely. You wouldn't say he was way better than anything else we had, but it's just wee small things that he used to do, and you would say, I probably we're going to lose this fella, and but again, you would have still tried to, coach him and give him some good, basic principles and, of what it took to train and whatnot and get yourself ready and prepared and all that.
I remember you, though. I'm just going to try to rejig your memory. I remember you giving him a bit of a dressing down one night, and I had a great vantage point for it because shock horror, I was on the bench. But Macca was playing in the team, and he kind of quickly became a bit of a fan's favourite up there. And but this one night he was having a stinker, right? He was having a stinker, and you've decided to pull him with about 15 to go. Right decision, but the crowd haven't reacted well to the substitution. So I don't know if you remember this story, but Macca's kind of responded to the fans not liking it, and he's given it a few of these, he's given it a few of these, and I'm on the bench and I'm going, oh no, he hasn't seen Gall in action, he doesn't know what he's in for here. And I was real sort of contempt, and he sat down beside me, right, and he was still giving it all this, and he was expecting me to back him up, going, fucking joke, I was going to score there, he was saying. I was like, Macca, you're having a fucking stinker, And he was shocked, he's like, what? I was like, you're having a fucking shocker. I was like, and hey, see you react like that? Oh, you're going to see all about it. You absolute fucking clown. And I swear to God, you know how he's tanned? He went white in the face because he fucking knew. I was like, that man is going to fucking destroy you and you deserve it. And then I remember I was almost I remember Lee Sharp telling the story about he couldn't wait to get in the dressing room the time Canton that kung fu kicked him. I couldn't wait to get in the dressing room. I was like, I'm getting the box seat for this thing. And I don't know if you remember that, where you probably thought yourself, hey, this lad needs taken down a peg or two, because it was, great lad, great player, but he was bang out of order that night.
I don't remember that night, right? I don't remember what I said to him in the dressing room or how I went about it. You kind of lose track of someone I don't know.
There's been a few over the years.
What have you done?
I remember the night, yeah. And if we had went in 1-0 and won the game, you're right. I would have probably. I would say, I don't even know if I had brought it up in the dressing room. I probably would have. I would say you probably me and you would have had a conversation somewhere along the line probably about it. And but the fact that they scored in the last minute, as you say, then it was just a case I had to probably, I had to let it out somewhere, and then I was kind of surprised at Ollie that day when we came in after the game, as you said you were saying, Keith, that he's pretty calm, and we're just up in Cabinteely, bloody dropped 3 points. And he's coming on, I was wondering why. I was kind of taken back by Ollie that time. I was saying, where is he going with this here? And there's in no shape or form, I says, can we let the players think that this is acceptable, in terms of us trying to go and get promoted or even try and win the league, that we come up here and lose a goal in the last minute when we should have had them dead and buried. So, no, I was in a different wavelength to Ollie that day, all right, and just then went and, just what it's one of those. You're looking around to say, well, where am I? Like Jimmy Doc wasn't in the dressing room, so I couldn't go with Jimmy Doc. So I had to pick somebody, and then your situation was the one I kind of went for, So, but no, it was just to give a good just a good kick up the hole for the whole group, and you were the focus of attention at the time, and it's kind of one of those, especially too when you go for the experienced men and the big men. Sometimes a lot of the times, like when you're doing it and you're going full flight and you're attacking somebody and you're slaughtering them, like I suppose in one way you're glad that you have that respect and they don't challenge you back, because at the end of the day, I wouldn't want the big man to get up that day either, like, and start making his way over towards me. That would have become a right old mess there. Like, so thankfully you stayed in your seat and you didn't. I says you wouldn't be as light as Funsty anyway, I would say, in terms of trying to get a grab of it. But no, but that's, you can't be feared. Like players, you can't be picking on the inexperienced boys or the younger boys, or the boys that you think that'll take it. You go after the big boys, and that was the point. And you were saying, I think that maybe helped us going forward then, like, and I suppose you were chatting about James Doherty too, being kind of like a
weapon boy.
Would have been picked on a few times, Jimmy Doc, like, but Jimmy could take it. Jimmy would be kind of like, I would never, like Doc did annoy me as a player, and you said, Chief, he just did some things you'd be just wondering just about. He could be headers that he could win and he wouldn't win, and be tackles that he could make that he wouldn't make sometimes. But he always played, like I always picked him, when he was available. He was normally, a lot of the time I would have played him, because I believed he was a good player and he was good on the ball and he liked to play and he liked to play forward and stuff like that. And just from the defensive side of things, I would have given him a rollicking sometimes. But I remember giving the wrong person a bit of a rollicking one time, and I won't mention any names. I remember kind of, and I was kind of taken aback about it, but it wasn't even too bad. It was definitely one of my milder ones. And Jeepers, I think the mommy and daddy might have been looking for me after it. The message went back to mommy and daddy that big James Gallagher, give me a, called me this and called me that, and hey mommy, and this is a senior player, like, and
go on, James, tell who is it? I want to know.
And it'll I don't know if you should ever work it out, but I could say one or two things and it'll probably give it away. But
did he last long? Did he play? He obviously didn't play long in senior football, did he? If he's getting his mum and dad on the phone, like, surely he's not.
Played a long time.
Did he?
Played a long time. Yeah, still playing. But anyway,
wow.
The message was out that mommy and daddy were after me anyway, But thankfully it never got to that, because obviously you just don't want that situation where you're dealing with mums and dads, especially with a senior player, like,
That's embarrassing. To be honest.
That only happened once, thank God, because most
James,
of the boys would always take it on the chin and move on, and the big thing always, if you do it and if you have a rollicking for somebody, make sure the next session that you're chatting to them, have a wee chat break. Yeah, you just get it gone, nothing personal. We move on, bum them up a wee bit and off you go.
James, just to go back to that one and Cavan, I suppose, just to sort of, I suppose from my point of view, and I know what you were getting at, and you were 100% right what you were doing, and I also know, maybe just from being a wee bit more experienced, that this is actually, maybe not exactly at the time, but maybe later afterwards, I'm thinking, he's done 100% right to come at me there, and the reaction maybe at the time from me is kind of the reaction that you have to have. You know what I mean? Not to be giving myself any wide credit or anything, but if I go back at you there, then in front of everybody else, credibility is a wee bit lost from myself, I find, and then for the management team as well. So I think that there was a bit of a turning point for us. It showed the rest of the group that no one's special treatment here. No one's getting off the hook. So that means everybody has to be on it every week. Like, and I think that was a good moment from yourself to step in there and you say, well, maybe Ollie's missed this one, maybe Ollie hasn't given as much thought as I have. You have to tick that box. Like you can't let that go, or those are the standards that are carried forward. Like, but no, even when I'm telling a story, I'm really even thinking you have to tell us who was ringing mommy and daddy. Like I really want to know who that is.
He's not going to tell us. He's not going to tell us.
Yeah.
Not a hope, because not like you two boys. Like I would believe a wee bit in what happens in the dressing room stays in the dressing room. You know, not like you.
Oh yeah, 100. Yeah.
Move off the topic of rollickings. We need to go back to the one Cowan told about Tony Sheedles. So obviously, was Cowan accurate enough with his portrayal of you in Terryland Park?
Yeah. Again, I have to give you a wee bit of credit that when you're telling these stories, you're at least you're not overly exaggerating. You're telling them pretty much accurately. Like, you know, 3-1. We won the game 3-1. Shieldsy, you know, bit of an enigma. You know, kind of. I thought I knew what I was getting. You know, I played with Tony, and then when I brought him back as a player, I knew what I was getting. 100% knew what I was getting. You know, maybe here today, gone tomorrow. That'd be Tony, like, you know. But geez, when you had him, you had a serious operator, like, you know. And I just thought he was so good in terms of, even for you, Mark. You know, and I know you weren't a kid back then, and you know, whatever. But just boys just to feed off him and just see the way he goes about his business and stuff. And particularly on the pitch, maybe not so much off it, but if you got Tony to training, and if you got him in around, he had a bit of presence too about him, you know, and just top notch. But you know, hard to handle in a way. But he wasn't hard to handle when he was there in any shape or form. He was hard to handle when he disappeared. That's when he was hard to handle. But so anyway, played. He was brilliant, you know. And then, as you guys told the story, he went in and did what he did. Then off he went and into the dressing room. And my whole thing that time was, it wasn't so much the red card. It wasn't the suspension. It was the fact of the person that it happened to, and I knew where it would go long term. And as far as I can remember, I don't think Tony played again after that. I'm not sure, but
He didn't.
I don't think we got him back after that. I think he just went. On one of his. It just went off the radar. You know, we couldn't get him back, and that's why I had to vent. I just knew. I knew it was more than a red card, and I knew it was more than anything else. You know, and in terms of, you know, obviously, I think from that night on too, like, I think I always wore runners. And you know, all after games I didn't wear, I definitely weren't wearing no football boots or studs anyway, because, you know, you have to learn as you go. You know, you always pick up these wee things, and maybe that was a schoolboy error as a manager to be in the dressing room on tiles with studs on. You know,
You nearly went. You nearly went.
Oh, I did. I know I did. But you know, again, I think sort of, you know, I suppose, you know, at the time, when you're going, I used to enjoy, you know, I used to enjoy it in a way too. Like, I don't like the rollickings and the things. It's not an act, like, but in one way, it's kind of hard to explain. You're doing it for a reason, and if you're hot-headed naturally, you know, it helps because it's more genuine looking. Sometimes you give rollickings just for the sake of giving rollickings, and, you know, but that one there, I just knew, even for us as a team and for me as a manager, it was going to have a serious effect on us long term, you know. And but no,
I thought
runners,
James,
I think it was runners from then on, you know.
I thought there,
Funsty had plenty of wee run-ins, you know, and even towards, you know, in the end up when I was manager, I remember the board, or they came to me and says we had to cut the budget, which was nearly non-existent as it was, you know. And, you know, I hate to use the word top earners because there's no top earners at the club, but, you know, the ones that were getting maybe a little bit more than others, you know, you had Fonsty and you had Minnow, you know. And I remember coming to say that, you know, what about in a discussion with the board, what about these two boys, you know? And I was like, well, Minnow, in fairness, like, me and Minnow would have been big buddies over the years, and I would know Mickey for a long time, would have been kind of buddies. so you're managing these boys, and there's a big call, and so the board says, what about these two? They're they would, if we got these off the wage bill, would sort a few things out or whatever. And Mano at the time was struggling. He was pulling his hammy steady. He just wasn't. He wasn't. He just took too many miles in the clock and whatnot. He was getting a lot of wee niggly between groin and hammies, and I couldn't get him playing, but then get him regularly enough to make a huge impact. And so I was open to the idea of Mano, and then with Mickey at the time, I wasn't getting the best out of Mickey. There wasn't too many players at the time that I thought, that I wasn't getting the best out of. But he came under that a wee bit, and again he might have had wee just issues injury wise and stuff. Couldn't get him going the way Mickey can get going. So I was open to that idea as well. So I think as it went, then I think I did say to the board at the time, I said, well, if you want to do this, I said, you can let the boys know, like I haven't brought this up. I haven't it's not my idea to do this or whatever. And as it turned out, it was the boys, the board let them know. I already told them that this was happening. Wires got crossed, and boys were saying that it was my decision to let them go, and then the other side was saying it was their decision to let it go. So it got a wee bit messy. Like, I suppose if you asked me earlier about regrets, and now that I'm thinking about that, it'd be one that could have been handled a lot better. And but long story short, the boys left, but we're still, I've seen Mano loads of times, I've seen Mickey loads of times. We're still, again, it wasn't personal. It was me as a manager and the board. It wasn't done right, and people were trying to point fingers. Nobody's trying to take responsibility for it. All I can say is, initially when the conversation came up, it was suggested to me that the two boys were maybe one that we could maybe look to get off, and I could have blatantly turned around and say no, 100%. I know I could have done that, but I didn't, and so off it went in. But we're still friends, like we're still buddies, and seen Mano, and and that's the thing with football, like you don't. And I was glad that the boys, never. It was a wee bit, for a while, but we still meet, and we've known each other too long to let football kind of, whether good or bad, kind of come in the way. And you make friends for life in football, like and I had a huge respect for the two boys, and Mano a legend, like and and then Mickey's had a great career, and he's still flying about down in Donegal, like so.
Was it even suggested, James, at that time?
That's all sort of part of learning, isn't it? Like
Was it even suggested at that time, James, that maybe the boys might take a cut, or was it just a case of try and get rid of them and get somebody else in on less, or what? Do you remember how it went?
No, I don't think. No, I don't think that there was a cut. I don't think they were chatting about a cut at the time, as far as I can remember. I think it was more just that if we can, just get the wage bill down, and there's no point in me they're thinking probably was, well, there's no point in getting five or six of the kind of squad players that were only getting a few pound, just go for the big boys. And as it turned out, I suppose the reason I never probably shot it down 100% at the time was, I couldn't get Mano fit. I couldn't get him playing regularly to the level. I didn't expect him to be at the level that he was when he was younger, but he was just kind of, the hammy was at him, and couldn't really sprint properly, and he needed to, because he was playing in the last line, and then with Mickey, just kind of, I just didn't think at the time Mickey was going 100%, and that's just the way it was at the time,
And Gall, not to stay on this for too much longer, but obviously that was a difficult thing for you to have to manage, especially your relationship with Mano, because you would have played with him a long time, and Funstey. Does it make it harder pill to swallow then when the sort of board hit the panic button, a month into the new season? Like, does that make it, when you're thinking, how long, like, I'm doing my best here, and now you're jumping ship, like, is that a difficult one, or is it, again, like you said, it's football, it's not personal, you just have to, they've made a decision, move on? How did you view that?
No, I would just kind of, it's my own responsibility, as I said, I could have I could have just shot them down blatantly 100% at the time. But see, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I was always aware of the fact that I was only 29, and I was blessed to even have the opportunity to manage Harps. And you're kind of stuck with that in a way where you know, when the board come at you with different things, you know, you're only starting out, and maybe if you fast forwarded a couple of years and you were a wee bit more established, I would have shot that down straight away. Absolutely not. It's not happening. End of story. We move on, and you know that's. But I was still kind of starting out, and you were kind of treading on eggshells a wee bit, and you know, not that you were trying to please people, but you weren't trying to upset people either, especially the board and the people that had the, you know, they had the power to make those decisions. Like, you know, so like in terms of no, like I was pretty clear in what I was thinking at the time, and you know, if it meant that we were able to continue on for the season, that the rest of the players there were able to continue on getting their few pound, and we were able to see the season out. If it meant that we had to sacrifice the two boys to do it, I just thought at the time, we'll we'll just do it. We'll need to live with it, and we'll need to move on, and that was it. Like, you know, no, it was kind of, I didn't, you know, after I was let go, no, that situation never really came into my head at all, you know.
James, obviously you're a professional footballer. You're in Glasgow. You're 17, 18 years of age. You're going to be out hitting the town. You're surely going to be pulling that line out to help you get the ladies, because you need that help. Like, you don't have the best of heads on you. Like, so can you tell us a couple of wee stories about in Glasgow and
I could, we had a few nights out, to be fair. I'd be telling lies, you know. It was a big part of it over there, you know. We we milked it a bit, but I remember quite early on, you know, because we were in digs, and we had a landlady, and I think there was four of us in the digs. A couple of, I think Liam Miller, God rest him, was in the digs with us, and Colin Healy, Colin down at Cork, and there's another Irish guy. There's another Irish lad there too. Well, there's two Scottish boys actually. One from Dunfermline, one from Aberdeen. But anyway, we no, big John Connery from he would have played. He would have came back and played for Portadown for years. He would have captained Portadown, John Connery, but he would have been big buddies. And anyway, we were out anyway, and we were still at that stage where the landlady, you know, she would be in contact with Celtic, and they would know what we were up to and all that, you know, and she would have a curfew on us, you know, for 12 o'clock, say. And so we were out anyway, and crack was mighty, and you know, we started looking at the watch and going, right, you know, it's come to the stage where we need to make a call here. Like, you know, do we actually do we get the taxi home, or do we just go gun ho and just deal with it after? And so the decision at that time of night, of course, normally in those type of cases, it's always, we'll just go gun ho and we'll think about we'll deal with it after, you know. And so we stayed out anyway, and we kept going to the early hours, and it's pretty late. It was late anyway. Like, we were supposed to be back at 12, and I think it was maybe 3 in the morning at this stage. And so we started to get worried then. Like, we started to sober up a wee bit, and we were thinking, what are we going to do here when we go back, you know? So me and Big Connery, we jumped in the taxi anyway, and we were heading back to Bishop Briggs, and Big Connery was having palpitations. You know, he thought this was going to go back to his mum and dad, and he thought it was going to kind of, you know, not only go back to Celtic, but, you know, he was in an awful state, you know. I don't know, like, I just said, we're nearly there, and I just says, right, I says, you just be quiet, just don't say a word, right? We're going to walk in here, let me do the talk. What are you going to say? What are you going to say? Just be quiet. And up to the door anyway, and Jesus, we opened the door, and your one was there, wee Kate. What in the hell? She was ranting and raving and going this and that, and she said she had no choice but to tell everybody at Celtic and all, you know, like the coaches and all, they're going to know about this and all that. Disgraceful, these wannabe footballers are not, and all this kind of started. So the story I came up with was, we were leaving wherever we were about 11:30, and we got recognised by Rangers fans. So we got and I was like, I don't know how they recognized us, and she was like, I told you 100 times, people know who you are. You should get recognized when you're out there. You have to be careful. I says, well, anyway, we got recognized. I think it was the big man that recognized first. I says, but just they started running towards us. We took off. Didn't know what street. We went down, round the corner, in behind these big wheelie bins. So we stayed in there, and heard loads of shouting. We were in there. I says, we were too scared to move. So we sat there. Well, we thought we were there for about an hour or two. So basically, we told her that we sat behind the bins, running away from the Rangers fans. Took us ages then to get a taxi, and then we ended up, made it home eventually, but traumatized, really shook up. And so then the next morning, me and Connery were in the same room, and the next morning, boys came in, the rest of the boys in the digs. What the fuck were you boys had last night? They heard the story because Kate had said to them, no, don't go into the room. The boys are really shook up from last night. We're chased by Rangers fans. They were chased by Rangers fans, and they hid all night, and they're really shook, and just leave them, And so the boys came in, and they had it, and they were like, "You two plonkers," But that was it. We got away with it scot-free, But we had to stick to our guns for a few days after it. She'd be like, "How you feeling now?" And you'd be like, "What do you mean, how am I feeling?" After the last night. Oh yeah, getting there. I think I would say the big man's maybe a wee bit more traumatized than I am, But
touched on your career as well, Gal, at the start, and you had serious knee injuries. You done very well to achieve what you did in the game as well, because you're coming back from Celtic as well, and it's not easy. When you're James Gallagher, the footballer that plays for Celtic, and things don't go to plan, and the easiest thing can be to fuck off football. I told Cowan this before. You sort of, did I fulfill my potential? Probably not, but I give myself a pat in the back, and the fact that I didn't really want to play football, and I came back from Harps. If I'm being honest, I was fucked off with it, and I could have easily just stopped playing, played a bit of Gaelic with Dunlow and KG, and you see a lot of boys go down that road. But just in terms of for you, how difficult was that transition from coming back from Celtic to Pats? And things didn't go great at Pats by all accounts if you're in the jobby squad. So was there times when you ever felt like there's something else for me than football, or how was that?
Well, I suppose when I left Celtic after the fourth year, I left on the recommendation. Surgeons, doctors said at the bare minimum, they said you need to take a year out of football, just to try and let nature take its course, let the knees kind of get a bit of recovery time. And I did that. I took a year out. Then I got the phone call from Dolan to come up to Pats. So I ended up at Pats 3 years, in and out of the team and stuff. But never really, always still in professional footballer mode. I suppose when I took the year out, that's a bit sketchy, really. I don't know where my head was really then. I was just going through the motions and just basically taking a year out. I wasn't thinking about much of anything. But even when Dolan rang me out of the blue, I didn't particularly at the time think I had it in my head that right now it's time to get back into it. So it was slippery slope in a way, I suppose. If I hadn't got that call, I don't know what direction it would have went. But anyway, up at Pats then, and then back to Harps. And you were always I suppose as I sit here now, I think I've had nine operations. Maybe I might even be. I've lost count, to be honest. I think it's 9, maybe 10. Some of them are just clean out stuff, But I had 6 or 7 at Celtic, and then since then, over the last few years, I've had 2 or 3. But you go through it. In terms of having a career, I suppose I did okay just to hang in there, really. I was never going to hit the heights maybe that I potentially could, and I suppose the bit of potential that I had back when I was at Celtic, that you're never really going to hit those heights again, because then the day you're dealing with arthritis from your early 20s, you know, so you're not going to go and have a huge successful career at that, like, you know, but you know, reasonably happy with the way the career went. Enjoyed most, if not all of it, like, you know, and as I said earlier, just at Harps towards the end, there was, you know, I had a lot of pride in my performances and how and in training, how I trained, and you know, and then when I felt, you know, some of my performances weren't really where they should be or could be, even with the knees the way they were, I just thought it was time to pull the pin, because you know, obviously you'd be looking at having a family and other things, you know. I was only 29, and hopefully, you know, God willing, I'll have a long enough life, and you know, you have to think about that a wee bit as well, like, you know, like, I'm already more or less penciled in for a couple of knee replacements, but it all depends on how it goes. And like, I'm getting one of the knees injected now every so often, just to delay that process, you know. So yeah, it's all about quality of life later on. So I think I made the right call to finish when I did. I probably finished far too late. I probably shouldn't have. When I came back from Celtic by right, I probably shouldn't have kept playing at all, you know. But it's as we all know, and you know, I suppose us and the people that are listening to this, like football, it's a drug and it's hard to shake it. You know, you know, it's very addictive, like, you know. And no regrets, and you know, met a lot of good people along the way, and probably meet more, hopefully. And
ever was the night that BJ scored the header to get us promoted into the Premier League. Like, a brilliant occasion, unbelievable. That week in itself, you know, going down to Limerick, preparing for the first leg, then back up to Fan Park on the Friday night. What was the I suppose the setup or the approach from the management team there when we're going down to Limerick to play them first of all?
Well, you know, Ollie would have been very much about, you know, like, if we get out of here, you know, with a 2 or 3-0 defeat, you know, we'd be doing well, you know. But that was, you know, down.
Just a bit of a delay in that. Just ignore that.
So Ollie as ever will go down, and you know, Limerick were in a false position, and they should have been up the table. So, you know, that's just the way. Like, you were well used to the crack anyway, and but you know, make no mistake with Ollie. Like, all of that stuff was just a front with Ollie. Like, Ollie knows there's more to him than that there. Like, but there was nothing really. What we did so far, as you said, you know, we went through a few playoffs to get to that point, and the momentum was what was with us, you know, and that's a huge thing. Like, when you have the momentum with you, and you know, and we would have been aware of not, you know, just keep going the way we were going. Like, you know, don't do anything drastic here, because you know, our tails were up, like, and you know, the last thing you want to do is upset that. So just leave us at it, and just make sure we're right. We're physically, we're in good nick, and we're able to go down there. And you know, basically the big thing was just, you know, no silly mistakes, and just concentration levels was the huge, you know, like, I suppose when you go up a level, concentration is what kills you. If you switch off, you're just punished, bang. And you know, keeping the concentration levels for really, really high for the whole game, and we did that to a T, you know. And as we did, we could only score from a strike from distance, you know. No, Ollie never admitted, but I had you know, leaving there, I was very, very pleased, and I could see even the whole, I think the whole thing with Limerick. So yes, they were on a bit of a wave at the time, but that there really shook them, you know, and you could see their chairman was floating about, chatting all nonsense. Martin Russell then was on chatting nonsense after the game, you know, about this and that, and making wee excuses, and they were seriously rattled and hugely confident actually going into the second game, you know. But again, the lead up to the second game didn't change much. We just stuck to our routine, make sure everybody's good to go and ready, and then let us at it, because the momentum was there. And you know, it was all you guys, like the players. It was like, you know, you've actually seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and you were just driving towards it. And and you did that, and I could only see it going one way that time. I wasn't particularly nervous at all in that game at Finn Park, you know, and yeah, it was a huge night. I have to agree. I think I said it at the time, you know, probably, yeah, ranked above, for me, it ranked above probably as a night, even possibly, you know, one of the, you know, when you think of it, you see, it's hard to explain, I suppose, a player when we won the league and we got promoted before, but you know, it's kind of, you know, as a manager, you kind of see the players as, or assistant manager, you have a real, just care about the players, you know, and I would know more probably than Ollie. A lot of them would have been there for years in the shitty times, and just to get to that point where you could have that big night with the big crowd, and then have the Premier Division football experience of that the following season, like it was probably, yeah, maybe, I don't know, but it probably might have been, you know, one of the best nights that I ever had up there as well, you know.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I remember actually coming on the change rooms afterwards, and as always, not to get ahead of ourselves or to count our chickens or whatever. Of course, we got in, and probably the first thing you want to have is, you know, have a beer so you can sort of spray it around, or have a drink out of it or whatever. But of course, there was no beer. There was no beer in the change rooms. I remember Gall, you coming in and said, "Get the fucking beers in here! Where's the fucking beers? Get the beers in here!" And I think I know it was wee Shane Elliott was sent across the road, or so he's coming back with a couple of crates for him. Do you remember maybe the finish, classic Ollie, when we came in after that there? He still, after all we went through, all we did, he still, I cut him off, I think, very quick, but he went, you know, everybody settled down, whatever. And he says, you know, he started chatting about next year in the Premier, you know, that he started going into a rant about, it's not going to be good enough for next year, you know, like, no, don't take it away. He says, Limerick are all right now, but, you know, he started going into one of these tangents, you know, and I says, will you ever shut the fuck up? I remember that, you shut him up straight away.
I think I cut him off, and I says, don't start going into it.
You shut him up.